Ikaw kay Cristel. May kasama po ba kayo? Kinuhin pa yung fresh.
Sa mga nangyayari parang
Many of the illegal vendors at Ilaya Street, Divisoria, Manila, pay a daily fine of 20 pesos to officials from the Manila City Hall. These vendors also experience confiscation of their products. This confiscation of their goods is evident ever since the proclamation of the Anti-Littering Act. The ideal situation in this study is the benefit of the vendors, while also taking into consideration the clearance from obstruction of the roads. This study aims to answer the question, what depict the negotiating behavior of the vendors affected by the road clearing operations at Ilaya Street, Divisoria, Manila. In addition to this, to create an agreement between the government and the vendors is the concrete output of the study. The researchers will use the findings of the study to attain the formulation of the agreement.
The researchers studied the negotiating behaviors through a phenomenological approach of the female vendors. The study focused on the methods of how the vendors bargain and what depicts those methods of bargaining. The researchers chose Ilaya Street in Divisoria, Manila as the study site of the research, for it was covered by the project of Manila City Hall road clearing operations. In selecting participants of the study, the authors considered the criteria of the vendor being a female affected by the road clearing operations at least 2 times, had had an encounter with the officers, and the amount of time spent selling should be at least 1 year. Why did the researchers use these factors as part of the criteria? According to Patricia Andrews on her research about gender differences in persuasive communication and attribution of success and failure, females tend to invent their own arguments during a conversation, which makes them more effective in persuasive communication. The participants were mostly vendors of clothes, while the others sell food. Out of 12 co-researchers filtered, 7 were saturated. In filtering the co-researchers, the data given by the respondents gave a concise and clear description of the behavior used because of the involvement in the negotiation. Information collected was saturated when the data continuously repeats.
The transcribed audio recordings were analyzed using Colachi's phenomenological descriptive method. After discovering the findings, the researchers returned to the vendors and specifically utilized Michael Wheeler's negotiator assessment to validate the results. The study, which led to the findings of 3 approaches, the questioning approach, reasoning approach, and legal approach, will be compared to Wheeler's 3 key areas of negotiation: the tendency to assert, the tendency to claim value, and the tendency to create value.
The analysis of the co-researchers' claims led to the formulation of the questioning approach, reasoning approach, and legal approach. The questioning approach is defined as the argumentation of vendors through verbal asking of a question. Through the use of interrogative questions and verbal methods, the vendors bargain. There are 2 methods in which vendors negotiate through questions. First is the query of permission, where the respondents confirm whether the goods can be repossessed, while the second, query of action covers how the co-researchers question the method of confiscation of the officers. Through these ways, negotiation is attained.
Vendors use reasoning approach in order to appeal to the officers' emotions. Some vendors use their senility or their financial state to make their officers refrain from seizing their goods. Other components of reasoning approach include blaming the officer and propriety alibi. This process is called pragmatic reasoning, which leads to negotiation. Legal approach, composed only of legal compromisation, covers the technical aspect of the negotiating behaviors of the vendors. The vendors propose to enter a written agreement between them and the authority, which then end up in negotiation. Vendors argue that there is an existing agreement presenting the documents, but the authorities do not keep their end. The study resulted to 3 rectangles representing the 3 approaches to negotiation and a circle in the center containing the word negotiation. The rectangles are connected to the circle with the one-way arrow pointing towards it. Written on the arrows are the methods in which each approach is conducted to reach negotiation. From the statements of the 7 co-researchers, the researchers were able to construct a trilateral diagram of negotiating behaviors.
Overall, the study yielded the trilateral diagram of negotiating behaviors, which shows a depiction of different negotiating tactics or behaviors that our respondents displayed while negotiating with the officers in order to achieve one common objective, which was the redemption of their goods. By referencing the different approaches, this study can be used to form a bilateral agreement between the vendors and the government. Each party must be able to understand the viewpoint of the other and exhibit trust between the two parties.